Hi, everyone. It's Julia back again with another episode of the Ethical Consumer Podcast. Joining with me today is Jason Tuttle, the founder and creator of Haymaker Works Elderberry Immunity Tonic. Welcome, Jason.
Well, hello. Very nice to be here, Julia. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Most definitely. Thank you for being on here. So, first of all, tell me a little bit about your wonderful tiny glass bottles of magic.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So the short story is that Haymaker is a 1 ounce glass bottle of the best recipe I could come up with, and the best recipe I think I have found for an overall immune boosting tonic that is based on elderberries. Really, it's more of like there's a trifecta, I guess, of powerful ingredients. Elderberry, raw honey, and apple cider vinegar are the really powerful forces, I guess, behind the product itself. And then there's some extracts in there and a few other pieces that are really great for immunity and also just for flavors, so that immunity tastes better than you might think.
Agreed. Some of the concoctions out there are definitely, my palate is used to being fairly earthy and of herbal medicinal value, but some people taste one sip of something that doesn't taste like a beautiful candy or Gatorade or something like that, and they turn their nose up and they say, nope.
Yes,
Not
for sure.
me.
It's not just kids, it's everybody.
Yes. Oh, yes. I have a picky adult downstairs, in fact, that does not always like some of my tea and juice concoctions I make for his well-being.
Yes, I've always said it's like if health doesn't taste good, no one really is going to be healthy, right? I mean,
It's true.
it's so hard. Yeah, so I try to make it taste good, and I do enjoy the flavor. And luckily, most folks seem to think it is a very tasty shot.
Excellent. Well, cool. So you started out with a kind of a different product, in fact. So you've taken Haymaker Works has taken a few forms to land with your immunity tonic. What's your story? What is the story of Haymaker?
Yeah, let's see if I can sum it up quite briefly. It did all start with the name Haymaker, and the reason for that, I grew up on a farm. Part of the whole thing for me is that I was a farmer for most of my life. I spent the first 30 years of my life on my family farm, and when I was a kid, we used to make hay. We'd go out in the hay fields, and haying was a big part of what we did. And my dad used to make a drink for us back in those days called switchel, or switzel. There's a couple different ways to say it, and some folks will be familiar with it. So that's where I got started. When I got older, I knew I wanted to be in business. I wanted to have my own business, create my own product, and really put it out there to the public. And I started with a version of switchel. And so I started my company immediately. I had read somewhere, I like to read a lot, and someone had said, start up and create an LLC. Just start up and have some LLC formed, and then just go from there. Don't worry too much about the details of it. Just do it. So I must have used LegalZoom or something like that, and back in the day, as the easiest way I could, and I started the Haymaker Beverage Company LLC. So it was kind of from my roots of being a farmer and making hay with my dad out in the field and our crew, and so yeah, it was, Haymaker was that, and that was the first product, and that kind of ran its course relatively quickly, I think. Switchel's a tough product to get off the ground, so kudos to anybody who has actually done that. And then, so I kept the name Haymaker as I started to think of new products, develop new ideas and products I wanted to test and see if there was a market for. And they were all products that I really enjoyed and used myself. And, the first one, Switchel, didn't work well for me. So I moved on and I created a natural sports drink. And so that actually was the next iteration. And then the sports drink brought me to where I am now. But yeah, so essentially Haymaker it all started with that name, and everything that I've created has been able to tie in pretty well with the idea of coming from my roots on the farm. And now, obviously, as you can see in the label of my product, there is a fist of elderberries, a handful of elderberries, if you will. So Haymaker is also a punch in boxing for those folks who don't know that.
Oh.
Yeah, extra little trivia fact there.
There's a nod to that on your website, actually. You have a super wonderful website, and I love that the kind of the purplish pink elderberry style color overcast on the boxing match. That really kind of left a mark on me. I appreciated your branding, which I understand is from a friend of ours at Upstart Foods.
Correct. Yes. Shout
They're
out to
good
Josh at Star
people.
Foods.
Josh is
Yes.
good peoples. Excellent. So you went from kind of just having the name, your namesake, your roots, going toward Switchel, going toward an electrolyte drink, a sports drink, and then to the immunity tonic. Now, we're not traveling a ton right now as we are still in the midst of the pandemic. But when we talked before, you'd mentioned that something that you were excited about and passionate about was traveling and being able to stay healthy while you travel. And that's, for me, a challenge. I feel like I always get sick after I'm on an airplane, exposed to everybody's germs. I might be one of those people that keeps wearing a mask after the pandemic. I don't know, because my immune system just needs a little extra love and care. So where did the idea for the immunity tonic come from? Was it while traveling, or did you just kind of transition from the sports drink into something similar but different?
Yeah, great question. So I worked on the sports drink, and I put it out into the market and sold as much as I could and tried to get off the ground for about 3 years. And there was just kind of a moment. I guess it was in the fall. I think it was the fall of 2018. Actually, I was realizing, first of all right, my sports drink is not really getting off the ground the way I want it to, but also it is a summertime product for the most part. At least at that point, I was doing a lot of outdoor sporting events in the summertime. And coming into the fall and winter, I thought, well, it'd be nice to have a product or maybe another SKU or something that is going to sell better in the winter. And I happened to be having that thought while I was taking a spoonful of one of my favorite elderberry syrups out of a bottle in my cupboard. So I kind of said, all right, well, here we are. I'm taking this, and I love this product. I love elderberry. I've been taking it for years. It's just such a great thing. And I was like, how can I start to make use of something like that? So I just very quickly said, what's missing for me in this big bottle of elderberry syrup that I have in my cupboard is that I can't fit it in my pocket, essentially. And yes, I love to travel. My wife and I, we've been very fortunate to be able to travel a fair amount, and whenever we do, it's that same thing, getting on the plane, being in the airport, arriving somewhere, the different climate, all these things do tend to take their toll on our immune systems. And so I started putting my own formula of an elderberry syrup, if you will, into these little 1 ounce bottles that I could take with me. And that's really kind of where it all started, was that I said, all right, I want to be able to put this in my pocket. And so I literally made a shot that I could fit in my pocket. And I would take it with me when I was traveling. Obviously, before COVID, things were very different. And part of my marketing strategy was, well, I bet if I put this into some airports, it'd be great, because I like, for me, if I'm hopping on a plane, if I could grab a little shot of elderberry before I get on the plane, that would be ideal. And so I would keep it in my DOP kit, in my travel kit when I was traveling, and I would keep 2, 3, 4 bottles, because luckily you can have a bottle that's this size in your travel bag. So that was never an issue for traveling with TSA or any of that thing, those things. So I was just very excited when I decided, all right, I'm going to make this, keep it with me, use it. I'll be my own biggest fan of my product before I put it out to the world. And that's how it started.
That's excellent. So you started crafting it in your kitchen and just taking it with you on your own travels.
I did, yes.
I love that. That is one of the hardest things, I think. And I mean, yeah, my fiance can attest to this. I'm always taking the packets of emergency and this type of medicinal tea and this type of tea and this essential oil and all of my goods. Like I'm a pretty low maintenance person. When I'm traveling, like I don't take a suitcase. I am backpack, like small backpack all the way. But my entire like TSA allowed plastic bag is full of remedies and not necessarily cosmetics like some people's would be. But it's so challenging when you are traveling. And once you get to your destination, obviously, you have the run of a town or a city or wherever you end up being. But airports are the hardest part. And I feel like it's gotten a little bit better recently, or not to knock US airports, but most of our traveling has been to and throughout Europe. and you can find a pret-a-manger or something like that,
Yeah.
a slightly healthier sandwich, soup, or salad chain. But the airport restaurant selection in the US is not known for being extremely nutritionally dense or beneficial. And it was honestly really hard. I've talked about it before, I'll talk about it again. I have a slightly sensitive digestive system. So, like, trying to get food that's not going to upset my stomach and isn't going to make me feel crappy on, a even 3 to 10 hour flight, it's a challenge. So having those little portable immune boosters has been key for me. Now, I haven't traveled since Haymaker's been out, so that's going on my list for next time. But that would be so ideal to have it in airports that someone could even pick up and not have to worry about taking it in their TSA allotment of 3 ounces and under liquids.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, ultimately, I would love to be partnering up with airlines, partnering up with hotels, Airbnb, everybody, because it's great. If I show up at my destination after I've been able to grab one on my plane or in the airport, it would be nice to have one when I reach my destination, my hotel, whatever it is, and say, all right, yes, I got off the plane, I'm in this new place. Let's just take a quick shot for a boost, because it really is that boost that I don't want to say a preventative boost, but that's how I use it. I use it as
Sure.
as prevention. So I take it all the time, really. And for me, it's there's a lot to discuss as well, as far as when should you take something like this, how often should you take it, should you take it only when you start to have symptoms, all these things. And because I'm not a doctor, much more of a farmer than a doctor, I try not to give too much doctoral advice. But essentially, for me, it's just one of those boosters that I feel great taking whenever I go somewhere, or even when I don't. I mean, honestly, in quarantine, I was still taking it quite often. It becomes kind of a habit, I guess. As you said, we oftentimes develop a routine of products that we like to keep with us and just keep our defenses up.
Doing everything you can, essentially. And what I love about yours, so most people who have listened before know that I used to work in a small health food store, and there would be, what I would call the kitchen sink products, which was like every ingredient under the sun thrown in. And then there was the purposeful kitchen sink products. And I like the purposeful kitchen sink products. And that definitely is what I would consider yours to be. You have the magic of elderberries. You have the apple cider vinegar. You also have a handful of mushrooms, and not the funky ones, but the ones that are wonderful for the immune system and for sustained energy. And you have echinacea in here as well, which is another wonderful medicinal herb. And vitamin D, which vitamin D has gotten a lot of attention this year.
Yes.
As vitamin D is one of the best things that you can be taking for your immune system, in addition to elderberry, especially when you're not going outside as much. We get so much of our vitamin D from the sun. And thankfully, when it was COVID in the summertime, we were all going outside and we probably had better qualities of life because of it. But now we're inside and it's cold and we're not getting our sunshine anymore.
Yes, it's sad. It's very funny to me how we are so affected by this lifestyle that we're forced into of not being able to be outside as much. And certainly for COVID, I mean, there are studies showing now there's correlations between how much vitamin D you have in your bloodstream and how susceptible you are to being tested positive for COVID-19. So it's one of those things. Overall, all of the elements, I guess the two things I would say is, yes, this is a functional product. I try not to put anything in there that is not going to serve a real function for someone. I am like you. I prefer those products that I know every single ingredient, or at least most of the ingredients, are going to do something for me. There's nothing there that I'm questioning. Why is this in this product? All that stuff. So I certainly appreciate that. And I think there's a lot of consumers out there like us who, honestly, oftentimes I'll turn a product around and look at the ingredient label before I really even look at any other part of the product. I would love to see the ingredient label be the front of every product if it could, but it's not typically how we have our products granted. But yeah, it's so important to have the ingredients that actually make sense,
Mm-hmm.
and for the the product's function, which is an immunity booster.
Right. And again, always blanketed disclaimer for this episode and every episode. We aim to stay in our lane and we are not here to give you medical advice, but we do enjoy sharing proven facts and, even the ones where, you know, there's there's a nod in not even just the media, but in the science world as well, even if we tend to focus more on vaccines and medicines and things like that. The things that everyone can agree on is being able to take healthy ingredients on a daily basis to help boost the immune system to perhaps prevent ailments from occurring. And then, of course, we have our handful of select remedies for when we're getting over a sickness. So, blanket disclaimer on that. But would you discuss a little bit the benefits of elderberry, because it got a lot of attention earlier this year, and it was some interesting press because there was kind of a debate, like you said, is when should one be taking elderberry?
Yes, and as you said, to not get into the weeds too much of all of the things that could be said about elderberry and all the studies that have been published, what I like to say in very short order is there are studies out there, there are reputable studies showing benefits of elderberry, and it's just one of those things that for me I look at everything more from how long has it existed, how long has it worked in our culture, in our world, more so, to be honest, than the studies themselves. But then what I do is I say, all right, well, I'm a farmer by nature, and for most of my life, I want to take the things that farmers have been using for generations that they knew worked. They didn't have studies, really. They didn't have much aside from knowing that, hey, this worked for my parents and my grandparents, and it's just been passed down. So I always start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, being backed up by science is really huge. I do believe in science as well. So now it's something that I love to go and see. All right, there are studies coming out of reputable journals and publications that do show the benefits of elderberry for keeping your immune system boosted. And I guess that's as far as I like to go, is that I personally like to use it more to keep my immune system strong over time. So I take it often. I don't rely on it. I don't wait until I get sick to go take my elderberry. I tend to take it all along. So yeah, just as a broad overview is the studies are out there. They're in, there's lots of blogs, there's lots of information on the internet, but I would certainly recommend that anyone who's looking to see these studies, go to some place that like PubMed or places like that are producing real studies that have been done by scientists. And yeah, elderberry. There's not a whole lot of folks these days who would argue against the benefits of elderberry. I guess that's one of my other things is it works. It's been working for a long time. It's one of the most natural and best things you can do, I think, for your immune system. So I tend to keep it at that. And really, all the ingredients. We don't look as much or as deeply as some of the other ingredients in it because it's an elderberry immunity tonic. But I'm a huge fan of raw honey. I think it's one of the best gifts nature has ever given us. And apple cider vinegar. Lots of folks take apple cider vinegar every day, no matter what, because the benefits are there and they feel them. So yeah, so I go with that. I say if you know something works, or if you hear something that has worked for a long, long time, and then you see some real scientific evidence to back it up, that's about as good as it can get for me.
Mm-hmm. Even better when the science now is backing it up. I agree. I teach yoga, and I also use a lot of Ayurvedic practices in just my own life and helping my students and clients. And it's a really interesting thing that some of these remedies, some of these herbal and mushroom applications have been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. And we were almost, I'll say we, as subscribers, that like herbs and things were almost scoffed at even like 10 to 15 years ago because it was, hippy dippy things. And now those are the things that people are gravitating towards. And there's
Yeah.
this new recommendation of drinking hot lemon water first thing in the morning, or using mushrooms to boost various functions throughout the body. And this is just age-old science, original science, before the science that we have today that's kind of making its way back around. I feel like there's a little shifty shift happening in not necessarily the medical field, but a little bit. There's more holistic practitioners out there and holistic doctors as well. But how we take care of ourselves, it's getting back to more of a nutrition and nourishment type of thing. I feel like, I hope that's my goal, at least those are the circles that I'm running in, and I feel like it's starting to become a little bit more widespread.
I truly hope so. And I actually, the idea of using food as medicine really, I guess, is where this all stems from, if you will, unintended there, that it is, and to be honest, I actually trademarked the phrase more farms, less pharma, because that for me is what I want us to go towards in our world. So it wasn't very long after I created the product that I was just thinking of this idea. All right, what is a little tagline? What is something that's kind of cute and catchy? Just a few words that can really stick in people's mind. And who knows if it has yet or if it ever will. But essentially, I said, I want more farms in this world. I want more products to come from farms, and I want less. I want to be relying less on drugs and pills and things. These things that we take once it's too late, quite often, or whatever it is, or have harmful side effects. And I always say, can't we just have more farms, less pharma? So I actually have that's our slogan.
I
and our
love
mission.
that.
It's actually our mission.
More farms, less pharma. Well, I'm not going to steal that. I will always attribute it, especially now that you've trademarked it. Don't be coming at me with a lawsuit.
Never.
But that is excellent. I absolutely love that phrase. And what is the old adage? An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure, or something like that.
Yes. I
Yeah.
truly believe that. And for so many of these things, I always say, there's so many products out there in this world that you can take, and why not? And I think that's the biggest thing is if there's very little chance of it being bad for you or hurting you, and how can you go wrong with products that come from nature, mushrooms or things from bees, or from, just from the ground. Essentially, that's always been my thing, is that if there's a good chance of a benefit and a very, very small chance of it hurting you, because it's such a natural product, it just seems like, why not just take it? So
Right.
that's how I've always lived my life, is like, why not drink a couple extra glasses of water throughout the day? Why not take some elderberry, some honey, some vinegar? The downside is almost none, and the potential upside is, I think, huge. So
A whole lot.
Yeah.
For sure. So back to your bottles. You did
Yes.
something that not a lot of other companies have done, which I love, and that you decided to use glass instead of plastic.
Correct.
Yes. What was your inspiration for that? Why did you decide to do? I mean, we all have a love-hate relationship with all of our packages tend to not be perfect, but some are a little bit more perfect than others.
Yes, glass. That is a big debate. I know that's it's one of those things I've thought a lot about. And to be honest, one of the reasons I struggled and kind of was happy to give up the pursuit of my sports drink business was because I was putting them in plastic bottles, and my thought was, great, if I'm successful at producing and selling millions of bottles of my sports drink, I'm going to be successful at producing millions of plastic bottles that go out into this world and potentially most likely end up in the ocean. I've got this mindset based on the research that I've done that most of our plastic that we've ever created does end up in the ocean at some point, and it's scary. I mean, again, it's been shown. National Geographic and other folks have done a lot and put out some information that's really scary about how much plastic just does not truly get recycled or reused properly. I love plastic. I use plastic for many things. Wish I could say that I was totally committed to never using plastic in my life, but there's certainly a place for it. And I just don't believe that if I don't need to use it, I don't. And so for my bottle, for me, glass, the downside is, glass does break. We all know that. And it can be messy if glass breaks. But that's the downside to some really big upsides. And the upside for me is that it's an entirely inert product. I don't feel comfortable with products that I consume, especially if they're acidic by nature. And I've always put together that acid breaks things down. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want acid products or any products really in a plastic container where whether it's BPA free or not, that's just the latest, I don't know, thing that I hear that people are saying, oh, my plastic bottles are BPA free. That's great, but plastic is just full of so many things. And so I made the choice to go with glass, and I don't regret it. I really love the bottles. I think that I'd rather pay a little bit more on my end to produce a product in glass than to produce it in plastic. Mm-hmm. And I feel great knowing that any of my consumers, to be honest, I feel good knowing that if someone throws my bottle in the trash, worst case is that there's going to be some more glass that's in the trash or eventually in the ocean or wherever it ends up. Landfills, I mean, to be realistic, we are where things end up is also kind of scary, but I'd rather be having it be glass and have some sea glass wash up on the shore someday than to have it contribute to the big piles of plastic that are out there. So that's the decision I made. I'm proud of the fact that that's the decision we made and where we want to go, and I just don't see myself turning back from that.
Sure. I like the word that you used, inert. It is an inert object. It does not leach. It does not break down, but in that sense, it's a better thing if it doesn't break down. Because like you said, plastic, you just don't know. Well, I mean, we know what's in there. Science knows what's in there, but it's not just the BPA. It's as it breaks down and gets into the fish that we are perhaps eventually eating into the marine ecosystem. As at least it just stays there like a rock, essentially. Rocks are not going to leach anything. They may change shape. They stay there. Of course, no one wants to step on glass, but at the same time, it's not putting anything harmful into its environment, as plastic does biodegrade at some point. It's not, I mean, truly, most things are biodegradable, and it would be ideal if it was not consciously crafted to be a safe biodegradable or compostable item, if at least it just didn't break down at all. It almost sounds like a conundrum, but truly, I mean, you have compostable and properly biodegradable products that are going to even enrich soil or compost heaps. And then you have the things that will eventually break down, and what they're adding to that environment they're decomposing in is not a productive thing. It's a negative thing. So yes, at least we can just add a pretty shiny sea glass to the ocean or the land floor. I know, or the landfill, not land floor. It's such a conundrum with packaged things. But until we're walking around with a bunch of mushrooms and elderberries in our pockets, that's going to be our alternative. And it's the best alternative possible. And again, it's hard to be perfect in this pursuit, but we can at least try to keep doing better and do the best thing possible, even if it happens to be a little imperfect.
Exactly. For me, it's weighing the upside versus the downside. The upside is just so much better, in my opinion, that I'm not contributing to this pandemic, if you will, of plastic usage and plastic throwing away-age, if you will. And regardless of how good our system gets, I really hope our recycling systems get much, much better in the future. And all of our waste management systems, but essentially a very short aside is that I spent most of my childhood not playing in the dirt as I wish I would be, but working in the dirt. I was working on our family farm, and I was out there weeding for hours on end, and I still have nightmares about that. But I would be out there in the field, and I would be digging through and pulling weeds out and doing things like that, and I would find rocks, and I would find pieces of brick, and I would find things. I would also find plastic pieces, and I would find some glass pieces from time to time. And this happens all the time. Everything eventually ends up either going into the ocean or into the land. And I would be amazed at what I would find. But if I found a broken piece of glass, or even like a full bottle, an old Coke bottle, whatever it was, I would think, oh, that's cool. I mean, here's this glass that's been here, and it's whether it's breaking down a tiny bit from abrasion, whatever it is, it's glass. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I found plastic, it was almost painful to know that there was this plastic that's actually coming out of the ground because, yeah, again, it just it doesn't belong there. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of glass, and I'm willing to take the downside of once in a while it does break, and that's okay with me.
And once in a while, plastic leaks. You know,
Yes,
it's
exactly, exactly.
you can
Right.
you can argue up and down the wall, and there's always going to be an additional counter argument, I suppose, as far as least or best packaging standards go. It's almost kind of fun to find. I mean, you're still finding things that have been in the earth for a while, but like when you find a glass bottle, like an old school glass Coke bottle or something like that, like if you had like what we think of the green sea glass or
Yes.
an old Coke bottle that actually has like the embossed label, not necessarily that paper label, which obviously would have degraded and flaked and floated off by then. But it's no one's ever excited about finding a an old plastic water bottle, but it can be a little
So true.
treasure trove. It's kind of fun for us kids that actually liked digging in the dirt and finding things. I was that child.
Yes, it's a great, yeah, it's true. Glass just feels better.
Yes, I think so too. So the interesting part to one of the interesting parts, there were many, with your going back to the ingredient list again, was that you incorporated astragalus, and was it turkey tail, and
Tell mushroom, yeah.
yes, both of those. So what was your first exposure to turkey tail, I guess? Because that is something I feel like mushrooms are kind of having a heyday over the past few years as far as immunity goes. You have these mushroom coffees coming out, and mushroom teas, and kind of like we talked about in the very beginning, they're getting like a flavor profile assist, so they don't just taste like earthy mushrooms. I'm curious where you first started using that, or how you decided to incorporate that into your product.
Great question. Yes, it's some of the things that you see on the ingredient label, some folks may not be familiar with. And I guess I developed the recipe fairly quickly. Again, I had a formula that I had been taking in a larger bottle of really an elderberry syrup, but they had added some great stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always just doing research on things that have worked and are natural. I guess that's really the two biggest criteria that I have: does it work and is it natural? And yeah, so mushrooms have really been gaining popularity lately. And just from the research that I had done on the turkey tail mushroom being one of the most well-known, or at least most well-studied for its benefits to the immune system, again, it goes back to the idea for me. I want to take a little bit of something every day or every other day, however often it is, that I know is going to be doing something good for my body. And it's been around for a long, long time. It's proven itself. Again, all these products, I tend to kind of shy away from new products, things that have suddenly popped onto the market that either hadn't existed for a long time or just been developed kind of out of thin air, if you will. Yeah, mushrooms have been around forever, right? And I had some experience over the past few years going out and finding some chaga. Chaga is not in this formula, but I think it will make an appearance in some upcoming formulas. I just love the experience of being out there and either foraging or finding chaga on these cool old trees, these birch trees. I love the experience of it. So for me, anytime I can bring one of those ingredients into a formula that really serves a specific purpose, and especially here it's boosting the immune system, I say why not? And I just try to find a great source of it, and everything is organic, so I find a great organic source of it and go from there. So yeah, turkey tail found its way into the recipe based on the research I had done about it, or about mushrooms in general. And as I was just developing it, I said, I really want to have some of those traits of mushrooms in this product. And like you said, it's making them taste good can be challenging, and I think that's the biggest reason why I built the entire formula around the three the first ingredients you read, the elderberries, the raw honey, and the apple cider vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you just kind of can't go wrong with that flavor profile. And then I add in these other pieces that don't really, you can hardly even tell they're there as far as the flavor goes, but just knowing that they are providing that kind of boost to the immune system is really what I was going for.
Excellent. Now,
Yeah.
you just hinted at some future formulas. That was my next question, is where do you hope to see Haymaker as a company and as maybe varying tonics go in the future? If you can talk about that now. If you can't, that's also okay. No need to drop the secrets too early.
Yeah, it's funny. I do hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about things that are coming up, but they can't give too many details on. I always have some formulas in the works. I actually think of myself more as a product developer, I think, than anything else. Obviously, entrepreneurs have to wear so many hats and do so many things to make a business run, but I love developing products, and so that is what I hope to be spending more time on the next few years. I do have two flavors, formulas, SKUs, whatever you want to call them, in my mind, and also in some testing phases that I'm planning on bringing out. I guess as a hint is that the next thing I want to be able to provide is something that can give you more of the daily greens that we all need. I think that's the my whole life I've kind of been looking for a better way to consume greens. Again, one of those things that just generically has always been good for us, has always been something you never hear someone say, oh, you ought to cut back on your green intake. Doctors don't ever really say you're having a few too many leaves of chard or kale or spinach. So for me, it's one of the things I love about having this business is that I get to kind of play around with how can I make this happen? How can I make it happen for me in a way that I will take and use every day? And then how can I put that out to the world and hope that a lot of the folks who are like us and have similar values or desires for their nutrition will appreciate it as well.
I would appreciate that for sure. Especially while traveling, because even the getting the airport food or your in-flight food, I understand that looks very different right now. I would assume, again, I have not been traveling, but I like to take a greens powder, just for example, with me to make sure that I'm getting that if I'm in a country where it doesn't lean toward vegetables as much, or maybe not the variety of vegetables and fruits that I enjoy having. Or if usually when I'm flying, I will get the vegan option because I would much prefer to eat something. I usually eat vegetarian anyways, but I would prefer to have a questionable origin vegetables and questionable origin animal products, I guess.
Excellent
Again,
point.
leaning
Yes.
toward better, even if it's not best. But that's one thing that I find challenging just with any product is, of course, packaging considered. I do enjoy, a bulk bottle or a bulk powder when I'm at home because I don't need to take it with me if I'm in my kitchen and I'm taking it in the morning or at night. But when I'm traveling, that's been a little bit of a difficulty. I haven't wanted to take my powders with me because I'm going to take an unlabeled powder in a tiny Tupperware container on an air. No, I'm going to not
No,
get stopped
no,
by
no.
security and
No, thank you.
question what this powder is. But when you have something that has a label and it is considered a consumer packaged good and it's sealed and pasteurized or not, what have you, TSA doesn't look at you like you're about to do something you shouldn't be.
We all would like to avoid the TSA looking at us with that look and
I
saying,
swear, it's just for my immune system, guys.
I swear, really, you want to try some? Here, try it out. It's great.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that sounds
it's
like a perfect addition to your lineup to me. Not only using preventative, immune boosting ingredients, but also just things that are that allow you to be a little bit more well-rounded, perhaps when you're not in your normal set of circumstances with all of your comforts and your big refrigerator as opposed to a tiny hotel refrigerator. That's challenging.
Indeed.
Well, I look forward to seeing what you do.
Cool.
Um,
Yes, thank you.
yeah. And then I have just three more questions, the hardest three questions for you.
Okay.
Hopefully, you look like you're ready for them.
I hope so. I like to think I'm ready for things, even if I'm not. Really.
There you go. Just go in with the mindset and then we'll be fine. Well, first question is what advice would you have for consumers, whether it's looking at packaging or overall wellness?
Yeah, that's it's great because I think we have a lot of power as consumers. So I'm happy to be able to give advice if I possibly can. My biggest thing is I like to find brands that resonate with my own values, essentially, and that can be really hard to do these days sometimes. It's interesting, marketing and branding is such a big thing, and we love packages that look great. But for me, my recommendation is if you want to find a brand that really resonates with your values, I always start with the ingredient label. To be honest, it's one of those things that I feel like companies can do a lot with branding, but there are some pretty strict regulations on what you can do with your ingredient list, and so you can't really lie very much. And I should say you can't really lie at all, but you can't tweak things too much. There's not much you can do. You have to put your ingredients down, in order of how much is in the product, and label and leave all your ingredients on there. So I would start with that. My advice is, and my ask is, please look at the ingredient labels and find these companies that are putting really ethical and valuable ingredients into their products, and not much else, and support those brands. I guess that would be my advice, just based on what I like to do, but also my request.
Excellent. And I think you said that perfectly too, where you can put anything on the front of the label that would give people the impression that this is the best thing that you could be taking, but then educating yourself on some of these ingredients, and if there's added fillers or added sugars that aren't, of course, sugar needs to be added to things to make them tasty, so people want to take them. But getting it from organic honey, which is also having a benefit in the product, or is it, cane sugar, or
Right.
is it sucralose, or something else that's of slightly questionable origin and purpose?
Indeed, I try to stay away from those as a consumer myself. For me, if I can have honey serve several benefits, one being the flavor. Again, like you said, why add sugar when you can add honey, which is super functional and, in my opinion, super tasty and adds that sweetness. So, yeah, you can't go wrong with great ingredients.
And honey is almost it's kind of how I have been doing a lot of baking. I have been that person during the pandemic. I've been baking a lot. And of course you do need to put sugar in cookies and things like
Sure.
that. But
Yeah.
I'd almost equate, it's the brown sugar versus the white sugar, and
Yeah.
the honey versus just added sweetness. It adds a warmth. It adds flavor. Like you said, it's not just sweet. You're adding that honey flavor that to me just absolutely tastes delicious. So I would rather have that than just I need to make this sweeter. Let me take this dropper of something that is going to trick their tongue into thinking that they're having something sweet.
Yeah, no, and to be honest, I love to cook as well. And if for me, food tastes better when I believe the ingredients are just better, or they're healthier, or they have better integrity. It's just, yeah, it's one of those things. It goes through your brain. It's a psychological thing that when you know the ingredients in the product you're consuming are at a higher level, for any reason, I feel like it tastes better.
Definitely.
Anyway, that's just me. I'm a little crazy, but that's fine.
I think we're the same kind of crazy, so you're in good company, buddy.
I appreciate that.
So how about for entrepreneurs? You started as an entrepreneur with making Haymaker and LLC, wanting that to be a nod to your hard work, your passions, your ethics. What would you tell entrepreneurs who may be in the same boat? Maybe their switchel isn't taking off, Or maybe they're in a conundrum of, well, my sports drink is great, but I'm contributing to the plastic problem.
Yeah, so for entrepreneurs, I think what I would start with is where I wish I had had the most help is when you're just starting out. I think there's a lot of information out there and advice for people, entrepreneurs or business owners who have made it to a certain level and need a little bit more help to get to the next level. But for me, it's always, all right, where do I start? How do I get things going? With my idea or my product or whatever I have going, or in my brain, how do I get this out there? So the one thing that I have a recommendation of is what I tried to do is I created my MVP, as some folks have called it, the minimum viable product. And so when I was first trying to determine if I had something that the market wanted, and I created my little shot that I was keeping with me in my pocket, I bought some bottles, maybe 100 bottles and some caps, and I created my own labels on my computer in Microsoft Word. I printed them out. I mean, I did everything on such a very small scale and with the minimum amount of financial input, because that's usually one of the biggest hurdles, and created this MVP product that I could just put out there into the market and test without having to take a lot of risk. It was actually very easy. So I guess my advice would be, if you're trying to start something, do follow that model if you can of the MVP. Try to create the minimum viable product and get it out there and test it as soon as possible. I think that's huge. And the second piece of everything that I would say is, once you have that idea, the next piece of the puzzle is really people. And I'm reading this great book right now called Who Not How by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And it's just this idea of, it's really who in your world versus how that makes things great, makes things successful, makes life wonderful. And the premise of the book is, try not to ask yourself too much, how do I achieve this thing? How do I make this happen? How do I reach this level? Try to ask yourself, who can help me achieve this thing? Who can help me reach this next level? Who can do this for me or with me in my business or any part of my life, really? So that's something I'm trying to implement currently in my life and my business, is finding the right who's, the right people to help you achieve what you're looking for, because you just can't get there alone. And
Sure.
It's one of those cliche phrases, you get there alone, and I don't think you can. Yeah. I guess I would start with that. MVP and who's.
MVP and who's. And I love listening and collecting the book recommendations from guests on this podcast. I'm going to have to make an ethical consumer recommended books list, because
Yes, please.
I've read a couple already that people have mentioned and recommended, and they're just pure gold. And I think it's because you are where you are in your entrepreneurial state. You have your recipe, you have your formula for getting there. And I think that's one of the best things and the truest things that you can do for your products and for people that are interested in your products or your services, whatever you happen to be working with. It's a testament to, did it work for you? Even with your syrup and with the books that you read, did this work? Did this make a difference in your life? It's your personal experience that matters, and the tools you use to get there that make you who you are, and your products what they are. And it's such an honest way of being that I think some people kind of overlook. They want the magic button that they just push and everything's perfect and their product launched and it's a huge success. And sometimes you need to find your who's. You need to find your people to help you get there, or understand the process behind things a little bit more. And I don't know, I love them. I love everything about doing what we're doing with this, but getting everyone's book recommendations I really like.
and trust me, I would love to see the list that you compile, because it's so true. I listen to podcasts. I love podcasts. I love reading books. I love all these sources of information that we have access to, and I think it is just an invaluable resource that books are still such a powerful thing. That reading books really does seem to be something that people have in common who are successful and happy in life. And not to say that I'm super successful, but I'm a very happy person, and I think a lot of it is because I love to read books and I love to just see what other people are saying and thinking and feeling and publishing to help us live a better life. I mean, to be honest, I think it's one of the best things that I'm still working on every day is trying to read more. It's one of those things that tends to fall by the wayside so much. But I can't recommend it enough to read more books.
Excellent. And that was Who
And listen to more
Not
podcasts,
How.
I should say that.
And podcasts, yes.
Yes, because you can listen to a podcast or an audiobook when you're doing other things, and that's another brilliant thing. Yes, it's Who Not How by Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Excellent. And then the final question, the question that everyone finds the hardest, but I teased that at the beginning and you said, oh, I'm ready. So what do you eat or drink when you're not consuming your own products?
Yes, I do drink coffee. I love coffee, so I drink a lot of coffee. I learned to drink black coffee recently, and that's a switch I don't think I'll ever go away from. So black coffee is a big one for me, but I have to say the product that a lot of people don't know about, and one of my favorite things, and I cook it for myself and my family almost every day. It's called Ploys. It rhymes with boys. Ploys is Ployes. So Ploys are essentially buckwheat pancakes, and I discovered them, I don't know how many years ago. They're produced in northern Maine. My business is in southern Maine, so they're pretty close to me. And it's just a package of a flour, essentially, a mix, a buckwheat pancake mix. And I do a lot of research on longevity, on living a healthy life, on diet, on so many things. And for me, my favorite treat that is still a treat every day, which I think is one of the biggest things that can tell you that something's going to stick in your daily routine, is if you look forward to it the same as you did, a year ago. It's these amazing things, and they're so simple. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that it's literally a package of this flour, which is buckwheat flour. There's some wheat flour. There's maybe some baking soda and then maybe some salt, and I think that's it. So it's super, super simple. And you add some water to it, and you throw it on a griddle, and it is my favorite part of my day. So buckwheat pancakes, that's one of my favorite things. Breakfast is my favorite meal, and so I try not to miss it, and that's my go-to.
Noted. We love pancakes in this house. So I'm going to have to look into this. You said Ployes, Ploys.
Boys, yes,
Okay.
And they're pancake that is, it's been a game changer for me because they're so easy and so healthy, and I love it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I will be trying that. Matt and I actually, again, as we are, finding the joy in all of the little things, which I think has been, at least a bright spot in 2020, is finding more joy in the little things, not necessarily the larger experiences. And it's been making breakfast sandwiches with pancakes on the outside, with
great idea.
good maple syrup, and for us, vegan sausage, and yes, it's made me happy.
Breakfast is such a great thing. I love it. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, what a great idea. You're so right. This idea that we're being forced to live a different lifestyle for a while, but we learn to appreciate some smaller things that are just right in front of us, like making a great breakfast and sharing it with someone. It's a great thing. So,
For sure.
Yeah. So there you go.
Glorious. Well, thank you so much, Jason. This has been wonderful.
It's been awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Julia. And
Most definitely.
Yeah. And everybody listening, thank you so much for listening.
Yes. And we can find your goods at haymakerworks.com.
Correct.
And then you are on Instagram at Haymaker Tonics. And I did a little dive into the Instagram, and I loved the honest and beautiful picture of you taking your first shipment on the back of your bike, read motorcycle, like hog. It's beautiful. To the post office. And it made me so happy just to see that representation of this is what happens when you are supporting a small business, was your smiling face taking your first drop to the post office. And that is something that I hope everyone sees when they're buying from a smaller or a newer business is that that person that's about to take your stuff to the post office is smiling and they're so happy that someone believes in their product and someone is interested in their product. And I think especially this year and this season, supporting and remembering your small businesses, that there's a human being behind everything, but there is often one or a couple human beings that are very happy when they feel loved and supported, and it just makes me happy too.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Again, haymakerworks.com, Haymaker Tonics on Instagram. This has been Ethical Consumer Podcast with me, your host, Julia, digging in the dirt, finding pretty bottles, and appreciating immunity tonics. And I have been with Jason Tuttle of Haymaker Works. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.